Glad to have you join us on today's edition of the program, Focus Live, right here on OGTV, the People's Telly. I am Dominic Agbe saying welcome on board. Focus is a no-holds-barred discussion where we take issues affecting us in the society and of course we dissect them with the aim of preferring solutions, really, if they are problems, and of course commending them if they are actually laudable acts. Today is no exception. Today we are looking at gender-based violence. As a matter of fact, from November 25 to December 10, every year it's always a 16 days activism, for gender-based violence, really. Activism against gender-based violence, particularly against girls and women. But we understand and know that in today's society, gender-based violence is not just against the female folks, it's not just against women and of course girls. We know that a huge number of men too, boys too, have actually been subjected to one form of abuse or violence. But we're going to be looking at all of this, in particular how we can actually reduce this scourge, because whether you like it or not, it has its own trauma and of course impact on the individual lives of those people who have been victims, and of course it has impact really on the society as a whole. So we are going to be looking at how we can reduce this tide. And I have in the studio with me to discuss this all-important issue Dr. Alex ADEBIYI. Is a public affairs analyst from my far right. It's a pleasure having you in the studio with us.
I'm happy and it's a pleasure to be here once again.
And of course, to complete the team is Mrs. ODUKOYA. She is a guardian and counselor. It is a pleasure having you join us in the studio, ma.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, viewers. Good afternoon, listeners.
Yes, good afternoon, ma. Good to have you join us on the program. Can we look at what gender-based violence really is? For the benefit of as many who may not have really come to terms with this term, really, what it really is. Let us begin by defining it in the simplest of forms so that everyone can really understand what it is all about.
Thank you very much. Gender-based violence is simply that act of inflicting injury through beating, through hitting of anything, through one physical means or the other on another person. The other person could be a female to a female, it could be a male to a male, and at another time it could be a male to a female. So simply said.
Now, let us look at it really. She has actually defined gender-based violence as inflicting violence on another person, and of course regardless of the sex or the gender of the other person. But a lot of the times we hear gender-based violence and what comes to our mind is the women, girls. Why is that so? And is it that they are the only ones affected?
Thank you very much, producer, presenter rather. It's unfortunate it is more pronounced and more highlighted to the women folk. Perhaps maybe because of their natural ability, or perhaps because of socio-cultural perceptions and beliefs and the likes. Because come to think of it, we operate in a patriarchal society where the man calls the shots, and culturally this is recognized by so many cultures across the divide. So the vulnerability of women to gender-based violence is more pronounced and more visible as opposed to that of men, because like I said, of cultural perceptions, socioeconomic dimensions and the likes of it.
Now let us look at what really are the root causes of this gender-based violence or violent acts that we are talking about. What could lead to one person carrying out violent actions against the other?
There are so many root causes, so many of them. It could range from the traditional beliefs traditional beliefs and norms of a particular group of people, that here in our place, this is how we do it. Men would always take the upper front of every situation. Another one could be like he said, the patriarch thing. When you believe that the man is always the head of a home, and the present situation of our own country does not define that. But the traditional thing, the belief is that the man is the head of the family. But the economy, the current economy of the situation does not actually define the man as the head of the family. When a situation like that comes up and the woman sees herself taking the upper hand, of course, nagging comes in. Of course, so many other factors like the woman, not only nagging, anger comes in. And before you know it, the other one loses temper. And a situation where you believe that somebody has physical factors. This is somebody who goes on drugs. Before you know it, he starts misbehaving. And it happens on the part of a female as well. Another factor could be when one sees oneself as getting below the standard of the requirement of the society. He tends to brag himself up. Before you know it, so many things happen. And another one is the mental status of one. One who is not mentally balanced, and at one time or the other sees himself at the receiving end of everything. He tends to be violent. Another one could be the poverty in the country. Do we believe that it is just a set of people that should have this money? Do we believe that it is a set of people that should have their voices heard? Things of such would always trigger violence. Thank you.
And according to reports, a lot of the times victims of these violence do not come to report. Probably they wait for it to get escalated, or they wait for it to probably when it becomes life-threatening, that is when they come out to report. In fact, as a matter of fact, probably it's even a third party that will say, oh, no, you have to take certain steps. You shouldn't fold your arms and be looking at things like this. You need to do this, take this action, and the rest of it before they now even reluctantly now take these steps or actions. You know, why do you think it is so? I mean, because don't you think the more people do not get to report these cases, the more these things will be happening, and the more those people who perpetrate this violence would actually be emboldened, really, because they know it will not be reported, and of course they will go unpunished.
Thank you, Dominic. As I articulated earlier, perception is a key word here. The society views exposing cases of violence, particularly against the opposite sex, with females now, as something that should be kept under the banner, should be kept under the table, because culturally there is this element of stigmatization. If you expose yourself of being raped, you are stigmatized, and society-wise, it is considered it is not too good enough for a woman to so expose that incidence of rape. That is one. Two, perception again is saying that people culturally believe, for instance, if you go to the police station, they believe you don't go to the police station and come back and be friends. That's another cultural dimension. Whereas the law should be there to protect and guide. But again, the question is, are these law enforcement agencies really there to protect? That is one. Are people willing to go because of cultural hindrances and factors? That is another one. So when you look at the mix of perception, cultural idiosyncrasies, and attitudes hinders this reportage of stuff you are talking about. People believe we should just manage it to advantage. People should not hear, my daughter has been raped, my son has been abused, and so on and the like. So we tend to cover it up for purely cultural, traditional, and primordial reasons, which is not good for us. If you see something, say something. Open up, let the society know what is happening. But the people you are going to open up to, are they also willing to render needed assistance? This is another issue. Because oftentimes some people go. Some go to report. But at the end of the day, what do you get out of it? The offenders or the culprit will be let off the hook with little or no much funds or stipends. And besides that, they have their godfathers. They have people that will come and back and front for them. That this is my guy, maybe he's an errand boy, he's a thug or the likes, and they get them off the hook. So societal hindrances, cultural factors, perception and the likes are factors that are militating against this index of reporting such ordinance. It is not the best. We need to reorientate the society. The people must be properly educated. We must be properly enlightened. More so we said this is the season for such. So through the social media, through the television, through the radio, through the NGOs, through the churches, through the mosque, we should concerted efforts to educate, to enlighten against this gender-based violence in our previous platforms. Churches, mosques, and the likes. Yes.
Of course, we'll still talk about the right amount of awareness and campaigns that should be put in place, really, to spread this message so that people can really come to know, and of course, the different measures that can be carried out, or taken to carry out this awareness campaign. But of course, he said something very instructive, and that's largely also about the incident of rape most times. I mean, people can easily go report a spouse that has probably, violently, physically abused them, probably in terms of beating and the rest of them. But not many, even mothers, would actually hold back their daughters who want to go to the police station or cry to the public that they were actually sexually violated. And of course, they would always point to what he said earlier on, the stigma, as a matter of fact. What is that stigma all about? And by now, shouldn't we be looking beyond this stigma?
Our society believes that there are things that are covered than opened. To the Englishman, open it, it's no big deal, the Englishman will tell you. But here we believe, most especially the Yoruba parents, that stigma is there. You hear beliefs like, she will definitely end up in another man's house. Who will take somebody who has been defiled? And you hear cases like blame on a part, most especially on the part of the
victim.
The victim. And of course, if we look at the society critically, we talk of abuse on women and rape for that matter. Do you really believe that we women rape men more than the men do? The men do theirs physically. How do you justify a female who is almost naked on the street? Is she not doing something?
She knows what she's doing.
She knows what she's doing, perhaps selling herself, and at the same time, do they really see themselves as selling themselves? They believe it is a vogue, whereas it is something else. They themselves feel somehow odd when they see people stare at them. The man who physically does that, who physically abuses, is called to order. But this order we talk about, what ends it? The stigma we are talking about, how many people will want, even when it is being read on the, by the social media, you see the faces covered, you hear names withheld. We really do not want to trash it in public. So I want to believe that the best to do to that is that parents to take good care of their children, teach them how to dress, teach them where and where not to stay at particular times. If we don't want the abuse of rape and we don't want the stigma to go. Though no one is perfect, if it happens, the trauma that that person goes on with goes a very long way. I have a particular friend now who claims that fortunately she's married, that she doesn't even want to any man, she wouldn't even want any man to touch her because of what she had undergone. And the same goes on and on like that. We see so many ladies not getting married because the trauma lives with them. But then we still need the services of counselors to get them out of the situation. Change of environment can be for them.
Okay, but as a man, and of course an elderly man who has actually seen it all, do you think there are any consequences really for a man, you know, to settle with a rape victim? And because a lot of the times that's what probably the parents of the victim will say, do not go because, somebody else will put you in the house someday and that person will not actually want to hear that ugly side. So if you go cry out now and everybody knows about it, it actually dampens your chances of getting somebody to put you in the house, to marry you. Now, do you think we should, as a man, we should actually see a problem in that? I mean, it's not our own doing. I mean, I'm not saying in all of those cases of rape, it's actually not the ladies doing, you know, but of course, in some cases, they are only victims of somebody's actions. Now, do you think men should have problem with settling with such a person?
Seriously speaking, beyond the level of the myopic perception of stigmatization, perception, cultural inhibitions and the likes, it depends on the mindset of the man too, the level of maturity, the level of exposure. Because come to think of it, the woman that was raped, as a case in point now, the rape incident was not consensual. She was forcibly raped. It was not her fault. Maybe at the point of being killed, maybe violent objects, gun, knife, axe or whatever was introduced and applied while she was physically roughened up and subdued. It was not her fault. So once you have a mindset that is robust, that is matured enough, and you want to move on, that is a way of rehabilitation, accepting them back into the society. Because like I said, she was forcibly raped. It was not something she consented to. So rather than stigmatizing them, rather than seeing them as outcasts, we should rather have that robustness of mind of embracing them. Forget about the past. Seriously. It can be very painful, and that she was not responsible for the act. She was forced. So that shouldn't be a kind of punishment for her. So to me as a person, I don't think we should just move on and forget about whatever happened. And society should embrace and accept them for what they are.
I also hear cases of where a family member, probably an uncle, a nephew, a brother, or even sometimes a stepfather, raping, being the perpetrator of the act, and because it is a family member,
incest,
you know, incest, and of course because it's a family member who has done that, they don't want to cry out, they don't want to report it to the authority, because of probably shame and the rest of them. How do you think such an issue really should be handled in such a way that even the victim actually, you know, feels some amount of justice really at the end of the whole process?
We really cannot kill that other person, most especially when it is a question of siblings. When it is a question of the uncle or the stepfather or somebody, another relative of the family, most times we drive the perpetrator away. But we forget so many things. Each person is oneself to oneself. No matter the piece of punishment that could be carried out, we all have a conscience. At one time or the other, we think so deeply. Even when the situation is not there, the thought would ever live with one. A situation like that, orientation should come in. Thorough counseling should come in. We should think of forgiveness. But then, no matter how much we forgive, we can never forget. So a situation like that, the man or the perpetrator should really show the soberness in him or her. Sometimes it is not intentional. It could be as a result of a force. Somebody getting drunk, somebody taking the wrong drugs.
Or the devil.
The devil is always at work. The devil has never rested for a while. So when such things happen, when it is the case of the devil, we think of driving the devil away. And how do we do that? It's a question of one's mind. Get yourself prepared. Be ready to face the reality of what is on ground. If really you are serious, let that other person, quite right, the female tends to drive one away, and the female tends to actually let the perpetrator know that he's no more worth the respect she had for him. But then the perpetrator at all times should think of ways to ease the mind of that person. But I will still come back to our society. Our society does not tolerate it. The best to do to the female is to have the perpetrator and the female separated. But when it is the case of siblings, yes, they still have to live their separate ways until the female finds it in her heart of hearts to forgive. But come to think of it, you spoke on the man forgiving and marrying the lady. We are all human beings. At a point in time, the devil in us springs up and out. There will be a time, you can actually look at a person and see and think of so many other things. What is really wrong with this one? Especially when it comes to the flowery. After all, I did not meet you at home. I did not meet you as a virgin. That enough is a trauma on the woman. And that is why some women keep that act or that fact away from the man. But no matter how much a female keeps a secret, at a point in time, she should let it out little by little. Because if she's bottled up all the time, she may not like the end result. There may be an outburst somewhere, somehow, in later years. So it is better when it happens and the lady gets married, she drops the information. She may not even say it straight. Like the husband and the wife could just be having fun, and then you just ask the question. Suppose you hear something like this, seek the opinion of the man before you let it out. And if it had been the case of the man, seek the consent or the reaction of the spouse before putting the whole thing straight. So allow that other person to pick facts together and start wondering, has something like this actually happened? Or no, let me not imagine it. Thank you.
Now, but don't you think it can easily be seen as being deceived if you decide to keep it away from your spouse before the marriage, and then it's after when you have now settled in the marriage, you now begin to want to share that ugly experience? I mean, wouldn't the spouse see it as being deceived?
Don't forget, I said dropping it little by little. So by the time the other party gets to know, I have given you the tips of the iceberg.
And so, of course, it will not come as a surprise anymore.
It wouldn't come as a surprise.
Now, let us look at the economically induced gender-based violence. We have that a lot of the times, as a matter of fact. We'll still look at the effect gender-based violence generally would actually have on the victims, as a matter of fact. But let's look at the economically induced gender-based violence, probably in homes where the man, of course, most homes, we have the men as the breadwinner, and so they have that hedge, that upper hand, as a matter of fact. But there's also some homes where the woman is actually the breadwinner, and sometimes through her actions, through her inactions, through her words, she inflicts some amount of violence, which has a psychological effect on the man. We've seen that happen, really.
My reaction to that is this. When you look at it from the biblical point of view, even the Quranic, Islamic point of view, even the traditional point of view, women are created to assist men from the point of view of the Bible. That being the case, there could be occasions when the woman have the upper leverage, economic-wise. That doesn't mean you should not be submissive to the man. Because come to think of it, every man has what you call ego. That ego is there, and it's always there. So I've seen cases of women that are the true breadwinners of the family, and you can never know. They so much respect their husbands, they so much keep the home intact, and they subject themselves to rules and regulations of how a good family and a family should be. That is a good woman for you. But the moment when you allow it to get into your head that because you're having the upper edge economic-wise, the consequences can just be imagined than felt. So it is not the best. If you are so, God has been so benevolent and kind, generous to you as a woman, to have that, look at the context from which I entered, responded to this question. Women are created to assist men, Quranically, biblically, traditionally. That is constant, it's regular. You cannot now, because of your wealth or whatever, now want to assume the role of a man in the house. What that happens, like I said, the consequences are better imagined than felt. So the woman should learn, no matter how the quantum or volume of wealth at your disposal, respect your husband. Give him his honor, give him his dues. Where that lacks, the reverse is the case. There will be violence. There will be crisis all the time. Because no man will want to compromise his ego.
Now, at what point really can we say violence has set in such situation? I mean, because I know that for the men, they have the physical strength. And so when they beat, it's not as if we're advocating for beating. When they beat, that's physical violence. Now, but for the women, they may not have the strength, but their strength is in their tongue. You know, they have that power of words. And so through their words, they can say certain things that the man would actually, that would get the man thinking for months or years. Can we categorize that too as violent? I mean, because there are quite a number of women who are out there who do this, and they don't know that they are inflicting pain, inflicting trauma and violence on their husbands. They really do not know.
It is called oral violence.
It is called oral violence. I like that. I like that. Oral violence.
Yeah. Oral violence can push the man to the extreme. When it comes to situations like that, I would advise the man to leave the stage. To leave the stage. Even if it happens in the middle of the night, he should keep himself.
By leaving the stage, what do you mean? Leaving the marriage? Is that what you mean?
No, leaving the environment. The environment at that, walk away at that moment. Even if it happens in the middle of the night. If they have just one room, he keeps his peace. If there are 2 rooms, let him lock himself in the other room. We cry out easily when it comes to the physical violence on the part of the man. But do you know that we women do worse things? When a woman goes off her way and starts pressing the nostrils of the man, what do we call that? We say a weak, what? Doing what? It is violence. So I would employ women to be cautious at all times. And I would advise women that one of the things that can cause economic crisis and violence in homes is the question of just one hand bringing in the resources. Women should get engaged. A question of full-time housewife should be erased. It is no longer relevant to our current situation of the country and in the country. A woman who hasn't any job should put herself together. I pray there are means of business for the women. There are some that swallow their egos, swallow their pride, and go doing menial jobs. They still bring something home. Situations where the economic aspect sets in and the woman finds herself taking the lead, she should always remember at all times that at the initial stage, she's been asked to give utmost respect to the husband. But I would always look at it at another angle in different homes. Paperworks, what we hear at the times of weddings and whatnot, the tutorials our parents give us, the tutorials we learn from the society are the paperworks. Couples are the field workers. Because what relates to me may not relate to you, may not relate to him. And at every time we want to take our weapons to give us our defense. So the field worker feels this thing more. And you know, there's another stigma to it. When you hear somebody parts her ways with her husband, separates from the husband, not even divorced yet, we tend to give the woman a stigma, whereas there are so many things attached. Some, when they take their leave, save their lives. Some will say, how do I relate it to the society? What will the society feel about me? They stay in the violence and take their lives.
Now,
not the violence, they take their lives because it is out of a question of, I don't want another person to hear.
Now, at what point really would you actually advise that they take a leave? And then I'm talking about the man who has been orally violated, and of course the woman who is physically violated. At what point really would you, do you advise or do you suggest that they should take their leave?
When you consider the first one a mistake, the second will never come as a mistake. So when the second is on its way, I advise either party or both parties to leave. If we consider the first one a mistake, the second will never be. Because if you allow the second, it gives into the settlement of the violence. And you hear one say, the worst you can do is to beat me. The worst you can do is to slap me. And you see that other person take another advance. If it had been slapping, it
will
go higher. And before we know it, it gets into the kitchen. We have wooden spoons, we have knives. So why do we have to go to that extreme? Nobody prays for situations like that. But when situations like that come, it is better one takes one leave.
The program is still focused live right here on OGTV, and yes, we have been looking at gender-based violence, the effect, the root causes, what it really is, really. We have been able to look at it from the angle of marriages, from the angle of rape on the part of women, and of course on the part of boys and girls, and men, and of course we are going to go on this break now. When we come back, the conversation is going to continue. We are going to be looking at the consequences, really, of gender-based violence, the effect it normally has on the victims of gender-based violence, and of course how we can really nip this in the bud. All of these will be after this break. Do not go anywhere.
How many minutes can you?
Yes. One day as I did dab they go. Now I see my neighbor on top electric pole. No be how my hold so before. So climb every day. Come on electric bill. You no gree pay. Waiting concern you for there. I beg you. Come over here. Government property. Now my property. If you don't come down now, I go report. No be only report. Now report card. Okay. Oh. Dab 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 dab.
Make una no sit down look o.
Focus Live, it is glad to have you join us again on the program where we are looking at gender-based violence. And of course, this is the second lap, and on this second lap, you have the opportunity to also be part of the conversation. Feel free, call us. The number for you to call will be placed on the screen. Feel free, call us. Share your experience. If you have stories to tell, let us know. Share your story with us, or the story of someone around that you know that suffered, and of course from gender-based violence, and of course how you think this can also be resolved, or this can be nipped in the bud. Feel free to be part of the conversation. Yes, before we go into the book, we were looking at the economically induced gender-based violence. Still talking about the economy, we know times are hard, as a matter of fact, and of course these is actually straining a lot of marriages, as a matter of fact. What would actually be your advice really to marriages? Money, the economic, the purchasing power of many households is reduced, and their needs and wants are not being met, and all of these would cause a lot of friction and misunderstanding, really. So what would really be your advice really to families?
Thank you. Every structure, every building has a foundation. the building we are in now has a foundation. So foundationally, a family that is built on strong foundations will stand the test of time. Marriages nowadays are quite different from what it used to be. Getting married through online platforms, social media, that is not the kind of it we are talking about. Courtship. Most marriages that are surviving the test of the times now are marriages based on long-term courtship. The man understanding the woman understanding the man. That is not absolute in itself, but it is a key factor. God as the head of the family, that's the second factor. Once you have God and you anchor, you promise your marriage on God, it will stand any challenge or whatever challenges. So you have to be prayerful, you have to commit everything to God, and you have to show extra understanding, particularly at times like this, because the level in the economy is not peculiar to Nigeria. It's a global phenomenon. It is more pronounced here, no doubt, but it's a passing phase. For couples that truly understand each other very well, you just need to show a high level of understanding. This is not the time to transfer aggression to your wife, to your husband, or to the children, the innocent children. No! It is time to show understanding, uncommon understanding, unconditional understanding. That yes, the times are hard, and how do you do this? You pray, a family that prays together, lives together. What is your prayer life like? How do you chat and discuss issues at home? Do you exclude your wife? Do you exclude your wife or your husband in conversation? Do you exclude the children? For instance, about 3 or 4 days ago, my last son came with an idea. He said something ADEBIYI dynasty. And for that, I want us to create a platform called ADEBIYI. I said, beautiful. But I said, go and articulate the aims and objectives and vision of the dynasty, and let us keep moving. And he said one of the cardinal principles of that platform is to discuss family issues. Beautiful. My last son, I was thrilled, I was happy. That is what it should be. Inclusivity. That the communication network should be very, very active and sharp these days. You don't keep mute. You don't keep yourself bottled, like she said the other time. Open up. Discuss issues. Where you have, share. Where you don't have, let the family understand. The wife understand, the husband understand, and the children understand as well. You have to effective communication with diffuse tensions, as opposed to just keeping mute, getting bottled up, only to break out and begin to perpetrate violent acts and lies. No, that is not what we are talking about. The times now are hard, but we should respond to the difficult times through logical reasoning, rational reasoning, perceptions and the likes. That will save a lot of homes. And the society.
And in addition to what he has said, to me, I will maintain that all those are paperwork. Paperwork in the sense that they are the traditional things we should do. They are what it used to be in those days. But the field work now is that we should apply the terms of economics.
How do you know?
There is opportunity cost in economics. There's a difference between want and need. Every person, not only the home, every person in every place of the society needs to know the rules guiding these things. There is a table of preference, scale of preference, like economics has taught us. My friend needs this today does not mean I should want it. I need this is different from I want it. Want. So the field work should actually come to terms now. The real home setting is where we have prayers, where we have the discussions. But you see, things pinch us more than one another. The way we feel the pinches are different. Whoever feels it this way should have it this way. If it is this way, it should be this way. There should be room for conversation. There should be room for interaction. The parties should learn to take opinions from one another. The situation is tense. Economic factor is so high. You can imagine people fight over 5 naira. No, there's only 5 naira these days. Even the biscuits we buy for our little children. So if we have anything like that, I have heard of people fight over minute things. And it is not actually the minute thing, but because of the tension in the economy.
Now, let us look at the effect that gender-based violence will always have on the victims and, of course, on the society as a whole. And, of course, when I'm talking about the violence, I'm talking about violence in all ramifications, both from on the part of the man who is the victim, the woman who is the victim, the girl child that is the victim, and, of course, the boy child that is the victim.
It was with Bob Marley's late wife. The first album she released after the death of her, she said, "Who feels it knows it." And in that context, the emotional situation that a man or woman faces as a result of all this domestic violence is quite enormous. It's quite serious. Because the psychological state of the man is dislocated. Ditto for the woman, where it happens. So to really bring them back requires extra effort. That is why the counseling aspect comes in now. Once a family is dislocated, it's a very, very serious breakdown. It affects not only the family, the larger society. It affects productivity. It affects interactions. Because the man that is emotionally dislocated, that is psychologically down, behaves irrationally. His attitude, his ways of life differs from the normal norms. So the effect on the society is quite large and enormous. So we should rather pray that it doesn't happen. Try to nip it at the bud before it happens. I'm happy you mentioned this is the period for that advocacy, and I think it's part of what we are doing now. So that the advocacy should really go on in chains, so that people can talk to their homes, in the churches, in the mosques, on the social media, wherever you can get it done. Please let us keep moving, because the economic situation, like I said and she said, is quite terrible. It's mind-boggling. It has broken homes, it has destroyed so many peaceful and happy families because of lack of understanding.
And
like you said, prioritizing your priorities.
Many destinies.
Yes, prioritizing your priorities. For instance, I was at Abeokuta last week with my wife. As I was discussing issues with some of the people I want to see, my wife begged people to call her, to cut for her cassava stems. She has planted, and they are already germinating. We should be creative. We should be innovative. Times like this calls for creativity, calls for innovation, not fighting, not violence. How do you get out of the box? How do you get out of the wood? That is what a rational mind should be thinking, not fighting. Fighting will aggravate the situation. It will bring consequences that could become unmanageable if you are not careful. Because like somebody just said not long ago, couples fighting over bean cake. To the extent that they beat each other, pop and then drink. That should not be. Rather sit down, work out the solutions. Prioritize your priorities. What do we really need? How do we get our needs right? I think this is really one of the ways out.
And of course, for the young lady who has actually been violated, what are those effects really?
For the lady, she tends to be wild. She sees everybody as nobody. She imagines those situations, and unfortunately, if she does not get into the right hands of counselors, the parents per se, if she gets, the moment she leaves the home, gets into the hands of nonchalant friends, she may never get her bearing, because they will teach her so many things, and she will go wilder in the society. She sees everybody, every man at the same level. She no longer finds time to giving respect, most especially to the men. And it goes on not only to herself in the society, it extends to the workplace. Violence causes so many things. In fact, to some who believe, what could have triggered that? Am I really seeing that very person I married? The psychosis gets in there. They lose themselves. If you get to the psychiatric hospital, you see so many beautiful women there. And the only thing they think of is the men. Have they actually gone into the right hands? Are they really dreaming? So many things come up them. So the effects are so many that we cannot even count.
Now, do we have gender-based violence also happening in offices, in establishments? Yes, we've talked about larger society, we've talked about the homes. But how about offices, really? We really do not hear reports of gender-based violence in offices. Is it that they don't happen, or they happen but they are not reported for fear of the unknown?
They happen. So don't forget transfer of aggression from the homes. An abused man, when he gets to the office, will see the women at the same level. And the women looking at him like that will just pack him aside. He, seeing that he's being packed aside, looks for every loophole to step on the women. They happen, but the heads of establishment look for ways of bringing down the pressures. Sometimes we have to change departments so that they don't cross paths. At other times, we have to make transfer out of
a particular location.
Place.
Now, we have the advocacy every year from November 25 to December 10. It's actually the world that is coming together and, of course, dedicating these 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And, of course, part of the reason why these days, are actually dedicated is to create awareness and to disabuse people's mind, really, about gender-based violence. As with custom, your advice, really, your advice as well.
The advocacy process that is ongoing is quite steady in the right direction. I will commend those behind this initiative, and I will want them to please keep it up and keep doing it. But meanwhile, I will appeal to families, particularly as we approach the end of the year, to steer clear of violence. It breeds no good, but evil. Tolerance, perseverance, uncommon understanding of issues will make room for peace and progress in the family.
Your final take as we go home?
I came to what he has said. Tolerance, perseverance.
And of course, do you think the justice system is doing enough in this regard?
We do not really have enough of it.
Okay. Okay, we must thank you so much for your time with us as we have taken a look at gender-based violence and how we can really eradicate or reduce it to its barest minimum. And of course, the different individuals and different institutions of government that should be coming together to nip this in the bud. We must thank you so much for your time with us this afternoon. We really appreciate you and of course the contributions you have made. We also thank you so much for watching the program Focus Live. That's the much we can take for this week. Next week, we are going to be back again for another edition of the program. Do enjoy the rest of the week.